Today's lesson is 8-2, Day 2. Our objectives are to factor a polynomial with 4 terms by factoring out the greatest common factor, or the GCF. We also call this factor by grouping. Here's your first example. Go ahead and write it down. It says 15x to the third plus 9x squared plus 10x plus 6. Okay, we've got 4 terms here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And again, we're going to factor by grouping. So factoring by grouping means that we're going to do just that. We're going to group them together. We're going to group these first 2 together, and we're going to group these last 2 together. Okay. From here, it pretty much looks exactly like what we did yesterday. We're going to pretend that this isn't here, and we're going to factor out the GCF just like we did in yesterday's lesson. Then we're going to pretend that the first part's not here, and we're going to factor out the GCF of the second part, just like we did yesterday. Alright, so right now I'm concentrating on these 2 terms right here. And so 9 and 15, if I look at my factor sheet, I find out that the greatest thing 9 and 15 have in common is a 3. So I'm going to write that 3. This 15x to the third has 3 x's. The 9x squared has 2 x's. So here they both have at least 2 x's. So I'm going to take out a 3x squared. I'm going to do my parentheses. I'm going to say 15 divided by 3 is 5, or 3 times 5 is 15. I had 3 x's here, and I took 2 of them out, so I only have 1 x left. Plus 9 divided by 3 is 3. I had 2 x's. I took 2 of those x's out, so I don't have any x's left for this one, so I'm going to close those parentheses. Now I'm going to look at these second 2 factors, the 10 and the 6. So I'm going to look back at my factor sheet, and I'm going to say, what is the greatest thing that 10 and 6 have in common? Greatest thing they have in common is a 2. So I'm going to say 10 divided by 2 is 5. And here I can't take out any x's because the 10 has an x, but the 6 does not have an x. So the only thing I can take out here is the 2, because they don't both share an x in common. So I'm just going to bring that x down. Plus 6 divided by 2 is 3, or 2 times 3 is 6. Either way you want to think about that. Now notice, something kind of funny happens here. What's in our parentheses here is exactly the same. And that's the way it should work out on each and every one of these problems. If it doesn't work out to where what's in the parentheses is the same, you've done something wrong. Okay, I need to go back and look at that. So to get our 2 final factors, what's in parentheses here is going to make up one of our factors. So I'm going to say 5x plus 3. Our other factor is going to be made up by what's on the outside. The 3x squared is on the outside and the 2 is on the outside. So I'm going to say 3x squared. And since that 2 is positive, I'm going to say plus 2. So I just factored the 15x to the third plus 9x squared plus 10x plus 6 into 3x squared plus 2 and 5x plus 3. This is my final answer. Okay. Now that I have my final answer, I want to go back and check it just to make sure that I did it correctly. And to do that, I distribute. So I'm going to go here first. I'm going to put a little 1 on that x right there for an exponent, since there's nothing there. I'm going to say 3 times 5 is 15. And again, I'm going to add the exponents because our exponent property says that if we have the same base and we're multiplying, we add. So 2 and 1 is 3. I'm going to go here. 3x squared times 3 is 9x squared. And down here, I'm going to take the 2 and distribute it. 2 times 5x is 10x. And I'm going to say 2 times 3 is 6. Now there's nothing here that I can put together. We're used to being able to put the 2 middle terms together, but they're not the same. This one has an x squared and this one has an x. But if you'll look, it's exactly what we started with, so our check checks out. Please make sure you have the work and the check written before you move on. Alright, go ahead and write down number 2. We have 15h to the third minus 10h squared plus 12h minus 8. So again, I'm going to factor by grouping. I'm going to group the first 2 together, and I'm going to group the last 2 together. We'll look at those first two terms at the 15 and the 10 on my factor sheet and figure out what is the greatest thing that 15 and 10 have in common. And that would be a 5. This one has 3 H's and this one has 2. So they both have at least 2 H's. So I can take 2 of them out. So then I'm going to say 15 divided by 5 is 3, or 5 times 3 is 15. I have 3 H's. I took 2 out, so I have 1 left. Then I'm going to bring down this minus sign, and I'm going to say 10 divided by 5 is 2, or 5 times 2 is 10. I had 2 H's, but I took 2 of them out, so I don't have any H's left. Then I'm going to look at the last two terms, the 12 and the 8, and I'm going to check my factor sheet to see what is the greatest thing that those have in common. The greatest thing that 12 and 8 have in common is 4. So I'm going to bring out a 4. I'm going to say 4 or 12 divided by 4 is 3, or 4 times 3 is 12. Again, however you want to think about that. Bring down my H, because I can't take out an H this time, because this one has an H, but the 8 does not have an H, so they don't have one of those in common. Bring down my minus sign. 8 divided by 4 is 2, or 4 times 2 is 8. Again, notice what's in my parentheses is exactly the same, and it should be. So that's going to make up one set of my parentheses. Since this 4 is positive, I'm going to put plus 4. Here's my final answer. We're going to go through and check. I want you to go ahead and pause the video and see if you can check this on your own, and then we'll check your check. All right, please check your check and make sure you got it correct. If not, please fix it. If you did not write it down and take the time to try it on your own, please make sure you get it now before you move on. Make sure you have the work and the check written. All right, go ahead and write down number 3. Number 3 says 12x squared plus 9x plus 8x plus 6. All right, again, we're going to factor by grouping, so I'm going to group the first two together. I'm going to group the second two together. The first one I have 12 and 9, so I'm going to check that factor sheet and figure out what the greatest thing 12 and 9 have in common, and that would be a 3. The 12 has 2 x's and the 9 has 1, so they both have at least 1 x in common. So then I'm going to say 12 divided by 3 is 4. We're going to bring down our x. We had 2, we took 1 out, we have 1 left. 9 divided by 3 is 3. We had an x, we took an x out, there's no x's left. Alright, now we're going to look at the second two numbers, or the second grouping at 8 and 6, and I'm going to look at my factor sheet and figure out what the greatest thing 8 and 6 have in common, and the greatest thing 8 and 6 have in common is a 2. So I'm going to say 8 divided by 2 is 4, and again this time I can't take out an x because that 6 doesn't have one, that's why I only took out the 2. So I'm going to bring that x down, and then I'm going to say 6 divided by 2 is 3. Again, notice I got the same thing on the inside of the parentheses. So that's going to make up one set of parentheses. What's on the outside makes up the other. So we're going to say 3x. This is a positive 2, so plus 2. And there's my answer. So I factored it into 3x plus 2 and 4x plus 3. Alright, and for time's sake, we're not going to check any more of these on the video. So we'll go ahead and move on to number 4. Please make sure you have all that work written before we move on. Alright, number 4 says 6y squared plus 15y plus 8y plus 20. Again, same thing that we've been doing on the first 3. We're going to do on this one. We're going to group those first 2, and we're going to group the last 2. I'm going to look at 6 and 15 on my factor sheet and figure out that the greatest thing that they have in common is a 3. Then I'm going to look at my y's. This one has 2 and this one has 1, so they share one of those in common. So I'm going to say 6 divided by 3 is 2, or 3 times 2 is 6. I had 2 y's and I took 1 out, so I have 1 left. 15 divided by 3 is 5. I had a y, I took a y out, so there's no y's left. So I factored a 3y out of the first two. Then I'm going to look at the second two numbers, 8 and 20. Figure out that the greatest thing they have in common is a 4. So I'm going to say 8 divided by 4 is 2. And then, again, I can't take out a y because that 20 does not have one. I just took out the 4, so I say 4 times 2y is 8y. And I say 20 divided by 4 is 5. Or 4 times 5 is 20. Close those parentheses. This 4 is positive. So again, I got exactly the same thing in the parentheses, so we're going to bring that down for one of our sets of parentheses here. What's on the outside goes in the other set of parentheses, so 3y plus 4. So our answer that we factored it into is 3y plus 4 and 2y plus 5. Make sure you have all of that written before you move on. Alright, go ahead and write down number 5. We have 8n squared minus 12n plus 10n minus 15. Again, we're going to group the first two together and the second two together. And guys, at any point after this, if you want to pause the video and try one of these on your own, feel free to do that and then start playing the video again to see if you got it correct. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do is look at 8 and 12 on my factor sheet. Greatest thing 8 and 12 have in common is a 4. The 8 has 2 n's and the 12 has 1, so they have 1 in common. So I'm going to say 8 divided by 4 is 2. I have 2 n's, I took 1 out, so I have 1 left, because n times n is n squared. Now we have to be careful, this is the first time we've seen a minus here, so I'm going to bring that minus down and say 12 divided by 4 is 3. We had an n, we took an n out, there is no n's left. So we have to look, this was minus 12n, so what happened in here was 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. And I'm going to look at my second two numbers. I have 10 and 15. The greatest thing those have in common is a 5. So I'm going to say 10 divided by 5 is 2, or 5 times 2 is 10. Again, can't take out an n here because 15 doesn't have one. So I'm just going to bring it down because 5 times 2n is 10n. Again, bring down my minus. 15 divided by 5 is 3. So 5 times negative 3 is negative 15. Make sure those signs are working. Again, we got the same thing on the inside of the parentheses. So that's going to make up one set of parentheses. The other one, this 5 is positive, so 4n plus 5. So I factored these 4 terms into 4n plus 5 and 2n minus 3. Make sure you have that worked down before you move on.
All right, go ahead and get down number 6. It's 14x squared plus 7x minus 8x minus 4. The very first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and add the opposite. So I'm going to change this to plus a negative 4 and plus a negative 8x. Now I'm going to go ahead and factor by grouping. I'm going to group my first two terms and my last two terms. And then I'm going to start looking at my factor sheet to find my greatest common factor. 14 and 7, if I look at my factor sheet, it's going to show me that my greatest common factor between the two is the number 7. So I'm going to pull out a 7 here, and then here I have 2 x's with 14. So my 14 has 2 x's and my 7 has 1 x, so I'm going to factor out an x here. And then in my parentheses, I'm going to say 14 divided by 7 gives me 2, x divided by x gives me, x squared divided by x gives me x. And then 7 divided by 7 gives me 1. So I'm going to write that, and then x divided by x is going to cancel. So I'm going to write that as 2x plus 1. And then here I have negative 8 and negative 4. I'm going to look at my factor sheet and see that my greatest common factor between negative 8 and negative 4 is negative 4. So I'm going to write that as negative 4. And there is no x here with 4, so I can't pull out an x. So in parentheses, I'm going to say negative 8 divided by negative 4 is going to be a positive 2. And then my x just comes on down because I'm not factoring that out. And then negative 4 divided by negative 4 is going to give me a positive 1. So I have 7x, and then in parentheses, 2x plus 1 And again, I can add the opposite, plus negative 4, open parentheses, 2x plus 1. So my 2x plus 1s are here and here, and I'm going to bring them down. And that's going to go in my first set of parentheses, 2x plus 1. And then in my second set of parentheses, I have 7x minus 4. 7x plus a negative 4, or 7x minus 4. Now, again, you can check that. You can pause the video now and check that on your own. We are not going to spend the video time to check that problem. That should be your final answer. Make sure that you have all of that written down before you move on. All right, I want you to go ahead and write down number 7. It's 3p squared plus 6p minus 10 minus 5p. All right, I'm going to go ahead and group my terms. My first group and my second group. And I'm going to go ahead and add the opposite here and change this to plus a negative 10 and plus a negative 5. So my first group, I have 3p squared plus 6p. And my greatest common factor here between 3 and 6, according to my factor sheet, is the number 3. So I'm going to go ahead and pull out a 3. Now I have p squared and p, so I can also go ahead and pull out 1p because both of them have at least 1p. So that gives me 3p, and then open parentheses, 3 divided by 3 is going to give me 1, and 6 divided by 3 is going to give me 2. I have to add my p with my 1 there, sorry about that. 1p, because I'm only factoring out one of these two p's. So 1p plus 2, close parentheses. Again, there's no p with my 2 here because I factored it out. And now I'm going to come over here to my negative 10 and my negative 5, and my greatest common factor here is going to be a negative 5. So I'm going to factor out a negative 5, and it's going to give me negative 10 divided by negative 5 is going to give me 2 plus negative 5p divided by negative 5 is going to give me 1p. Okay? That's the exact same thing as saying 3p times p plus 2 minus 5, 2 plus p. Okay, so this is a little bit different from all of the other ones we've already done because here we have p plus 2 and 2 plus p. The important thing here to remember is that they are both positive. The p and the 2 are both positive, so it doesn't matter what order I'm adding them in. They are the exact same thing. So that's the exact same thing as saying that I have p plus 2 in both sets of parentheses, because that is actually what I have. And in my second set of parentheses, it's going to be 3p minus 5, because I have 3p minus 5. Make sure that you have all of that down before you move on. We're going to look at one more of these on the video, and then we'll do the last two in class. All right, go ahead and write down number 8. Number 8 is 8y minus 8 minus x plus xy. Don't panic because now we suddenly have x's and y's in our problem. The first thing we're going to do is what we've been doing all along. We're going to add the opposite, plus a negative 8 plus a negative x. And then we're going to group just like we have been all along. 8y and negative 8 have a common factor of 8. So I'm going to go ahead and pull out my 8. And that's going to leave me with y, and then negative 8 divided by 8 is going to give me negative 1, so it's y minus 1. Here, my greatest common factor between negative x and xy is the letter x, the variable. So I'm going to pull out my x, open parentheses. If I pulled out a positive x from negative x, that leaves me with negative 1. Plus y, because I pulled out that x as well. So now I have something very similar to what I had last time, but I have negatives involved, so I have to pay close attention here. It's y minus 1 and negative 1 plus y. Those are the same thing. Y minus 1 and negative 1 plus y are the same thing because both of my y's are positive, both of my 1's are negative. So that is the exact same thing. So I can go ahead and put that in parentheses, and I'm just going to say y minus 1. And then here I have 8 plus x. So I'm going to say 8 plus x. And this is what I would check with to find out, but it would bring me right back to the original problem. So that, make sure that you have that down and all of the work shown. You can pause the video if you need to. This is the last example that we're going to go over on the video today. Make sure you bring your notes with you to class tomorrow, and thank you for watching.